Eddie Barber, thank you so very much for joining us here today on Tir-Kai Tales. I'm really excited for our listeners to hear your journey and your contributions that you've had to the film and television industry, as well as the music industry. I'm just going to read off for our listeners and viewers some of your amazing creations, including the handheld camera stabilizer, the Emmy Award-winning camera boom, crane jib, the Emmy Award-winning Easy Prompter, the Spin Cam, and just to mention a few. So we really look forward to hearing about how these inventions came about, how they're helping the industry, and the impact and legacy you wish to leave on the industry and in people's lives. So thank you so much for joining us here on Tir-Kai Tales.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This is great. So I see a lot of amazing awards back there behind you. So I can't wait to hear all about that. So, but before we get to that, let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, your family structure.
Well, was born in Clarksville, Tennessee. My old friend Mickey Dolans of the Monkees actually did a song about it, Last Train to Clarksville. I think I lived there till maybe the ripe old age of about 6 months. And my dad was in the military, so we flew off to Germany and kind of grew up a bit there. And then came back to the States, didn't speak the best English. Started first grade, school kind of went downhill from there. Got through, school for the most part. Started hanging out at the local TV station in Greenville, North Carolina when I was 13. My art teacher, Miss Eakes, not as scary as it sounds, she had a project where we would go to the local TV station and get old commercial 16 millimeter film and scratch cartoons on it or animation on it. So I did one where, the first frame is a spot, like a little dot, and then it grows into an egg, and then the egg cracks open, and then out jumps a little stick figure, and he runs over to a ladder and goes up a ladder and out a diving board and bounces up and down a couple of times and splashes in the water. And that's what I scratched frame by frame onto my little roll of 16 millimeter film. But
Wow.
anyway, when we would go to the local TV station to pick up the film, I met people and I started going out there and hanging out. And it was a challenge because they would always want to, run me off. And, management was like, who's this kid, hanging out at the station? So I would do all kinds of things just so they would let me hang out, like run errands and dump the trash and pick up stuff and, even go home with people and rake their leaves and mow their lawns, wash their car, whatever I could, so they would let me hang out. And after hanging out there a few years, I think at 16, I got a job processing film, and I became a film processor. And then also when I was around 16 or so, my parents divorced. And you know how most kids leave home at a certain time? I
Yes.
didn't really per se leave home. It was more like home left me. And I ended up, like my mom first moved away to Tennessee, and then my dad moved away to Durham, North Carolina, and I stayed there. And I had a van, and I basically rented a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. And I rented both the rooms to college students. I lived in my van, but used the apartment as a place to keep my stuff and cook and shower and stuff. But I worked at that station until I think I was around 18, then went to work for another. And by the way, at that station, started as a film processor, became a, studio cameraman, and then a news cameraman, and, kind of worked my way up the chain. Then went to work at another station, and then, another one. And I basically worked at a whole bunch of stations. I think it was 9 of them. And when
Wow.
I was around, I think, I want to say around 24, 3 or 4, or something like that, I made this remote control camera boom. I had made other versions of it when I was a kid, but they didn't work nearly as well as the one I made when I was 24. I spent 6 months of nights, weekends, and paychecks making this camera boom crane jib thing. And sold some to NBC in New York, sold some to other people. And I think it was around 1983, NBC in Burbank as well as the producers of Your Choice for the Film Awards. They invited me to come to LA because they wanted, the folks at NBC in Burbank had heard about the ones at NBC in New York, and the producers of Your Choice for the Film Awards had heard about it. They wanted to use it for the show. So they invited me to come to LA, and they paid my expenses to come out here. When I first came out here, I did the show, and then I decided, that I wanted to try to give it a go out here. And I literally slept on someone's couch in their duplex for a couple of months until I made enough money to lease a house with a swimming pool, which was pretty cool because I'd never had a house with a swimming pool.
Oh,
The camera boom really opened a lot of doors for me, because normally back in the early 80s, to work in the film industry, you generally had to be related to the right person or go to the right film school and win the right film school awards or whatever. And my camera boom really, took me to the head of the line. I could literally set up my camera boom on the corner of Highland and Hollywood, in Hollywood, and people would stop me and ask me about it, and I would get hired to work on their projects. And I could, back then it was very easy to sneak onto a lot. So I could very easily, pull up to a lot, at security and say, I have a delivery for whatever show. Okay. And they would let me on, give me a drive-on pass. I would find my way to wherever the commissary was. I would usually do this like around 10 or 11 in the morning. I would set up, and people going to lunch, literally producers and directors and cameramen, different people would come up to me and go, wow, what is that? And I would show it to them. And they would literally, after a bit of conversation, they would hire me to go work on their show. And it was, everything from network TV shows to national commercials to music videos for major artists to major feature films. It was all kinds of stuff. It was really pretty
yeah.
cool.
That's so awesome. I love that. I'm going to have hold tight just 1 minute. I want to fix one audio thing. I can edit this real easy. So just hang tight.
Okay, sure.
Perfect. All right. All right. So we're going to pick up from here.
Okay.
That's amazing. I love that story because it reminds me so much of the stories that I've heard about, like Steven Spielberg, who would just sneak onto the Universal lot and just do any odd job that he could, just wanted to be immersed in that environment and want to learn and be a sponge. So I love that, Eddie. It was just, that's such an adventuresome story. And for stunt performers, we can relate to that so much in terms of when we would, pre-COVID, be able to hustle a set. And, you just have to kind of ride that fine line of acting like you belong there, but also disappearing just so that you could meet the stunt coordinator in person and hopefully pass off your information or get to talk to them. And lots of times we'd come up with some pretty creative ways to get on set without disrupting or being unsafe, obviously. And all the stunt coordinators, they've all done it. That's how you get to know people, and they see the initiative, they see that hard work, they get to meet you in person and see your personality and that you're really driven. So as stunt performers listening to this podcast, we can totally relate to those amazing stories. So it's not just the stunt performers that do that. It's, your technical crew and your camera crew and your future directors and innovators that just want to be surrounded by that environment and that industry. So that's such an exciting story. I love it. Yes. What was there a particular film or genre that got you excited about the film and television industry, that you're like, hey, this is what I want to create. This is what I want to do for a living?
Well, there have been a lot of movies that I've seen, and I was like, wow, I so wish I had known about it ahead of time, so I could have, tried to weasel my way in and get in on it. But when they're done, they're done. And I always did the balance between the whole, trying to get in on something versus being too much of a pest or getting in trouble or, getting blacklisted or, that kind of stuff, so it's, but I can't think of a specific film or anything that inspired me, but I can tell you this: when I was a kid
Yes.
growing up in North Carolina, that little, and even before then, when I was a little kid growing up in Florida or Tennessee or whatever, I was always fascinated by that little, black and white box with the grainy image. Like when I lived in Greenville, North Carolina, we had 3 channels. There was channel 9 that came in pretty good. And then there was channel 7 that kind of was a bit snowy. And then there was, I think, channel 12 that was like really, really, really snowy. And you had to use like aluminum foil on the rabbit ears.
The
on the
rabbit
antenna.
ears. I was just going to say that, the old rabbit ears.
And you see these comedies where people, talk about they have somebody, holding the aluminum foil on the antenna and okay, like don't move. That literally was me as a kid while my parents and sister were watching TV. I was like holding anyway, we'd take turns having to hold the aluminum foil on the antenna. But yeah, it was always, how do you get in that box and, how do you create those images and stuff?
That's so great. Almost like an animator. It's like you were saying how you were drawing out figures and then, so this is how we would see animators start to create stories. And you were doing that with the cameras. And that's just so great. Just that creativity. You wanted to see, you had a canvas. So, the camera was your canvas and what images are you going to paint on that? And how are you going to be creative with that? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I think one of the things that have made me stand out from most is that I always enjoyed moving the camera and wanted to move the camera. And I was always figuring out ways to move the camera. Like when I was a kid, I had some neighbors that lived across the street that were college kids. And one of them's father had a 16 millimeter film camera that he had loaned him. And I was real fascinated by that camera and I wanted to play with it. The biggest problem with it was the film. Oh, let me back up a minute. The 16 millimeter one was later. This kid had an 8 millimeter film camera.
8
and
mil.
yeah, and there was the cost of the film and the cost of the processing and blah, blah, blah. So, holding the camera and looking through it and blah, and, having an imagination was one thing, but being able to actually shoot something and then look at it was a whole nother expense, like many weeks of mowing lawns for $1 or $2 to be able to buy the film and process it and, wait a week to get it back and all that. But when I was playing with it, one of the first things I noticed was, it was a bit shaky. So I came up with this idea of, putting a stick on the bottom of it. And that made it really, really stable compared to just holding it. And I showed my friend and he laughed, my neighbor, college student kid. And he laughed. He said, yeah, you've just invented the monopod. I'm like, what? And he got out this photography magazine and showed me what a monopod was. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I quickly learned that that if you walked with it, it was smoother, but it was a bit wobbly. So I learned that if I put a weight at the bottom and you balanced it in your hand, you could walk with it and it'd be really smooth. You couldn't see what you were shooting until, a week or 2 later when you got the film back, but you could point and shoot and you could walk and it would be much, much smoother. And that led to my current product, which is the SteadyPod, which seems to be the world's first handheld camera stabilizer.
Unbelievable. It's just fantastic. Like you said, all of these inventions came about with you just wanting to know, how can we move with the camera? How can we have more active shots and increase the director's ability to be creative, to get these unique shots? For a lot of our equestrian listeners, our competitive equestrians or people that work with horses, horses are, constantly moving, galloping. I think sports have really made a great way of being able to capture, whether it's eventing or jumping or racing or whatever, these movements of the horses. And people are like, oh, this is really neat to be able to see this performance, say, for instance, a horse galloping cross country over jumps in the sport of eventing. But how are we getting those shots? How are we broadcasting it? It's people like you that are creating these amazing cameras that we can capture this motion. And we've seen that in all types of sports. I think it's fun to watch the development of sports broadcasting and to be able to follow these athletes, regardless of the sport, because of inventions through camera work that allow us to do that now, like what you've done.
Oh, Yes. And speaking of horses, I remember once I was shooting a Western up in Napa Valley, and I was riding the horse with my steady pod. And, I'm holding the reins with one hand, and I'm holding the steady pod, the camera stabilizer with the other hand. And we're riding along. And there was a snake or something that like spooked the horse. And all of a sudden, I'm like, lose the reins, holding on to the the what is it, the
The the horn on the saddle,
mane.
or you're holding on to the mane. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
mane and the whole thing on the saddle,
Grab
and
mane.
I'm trying not to drop the camera with the steady pod. And it was a 16 millimeter film camera, so it's a little on the heavy side. But this horse just takes off. I'm hanging on for dear life. I got no control, and everybody else is like freaking out. And finally, the horse kind of calmed down, and I, got my composure, and we did it again. But for a moment there was pretty touch and go scary.
You were doing your own stunt there. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Was there someone in your life that made an impactful moment for you along your desire to create with these cameras and to make these inventions? Was there a pioneer that you studied their work? Was there someone that you looked up to, or people that you collaborated with to help you
Um,
create these cameras?
yes, yes. When I first started hanging out at Channel 9 in Greenville, North Carolina, I met a gentleman by the name of Mac Nicholson, who was the production manager at the time, and later he became the studio manager, or the station manager. And Mac was the main guy that would, help me learn stuff and give me opportunities to do stuff. And you know, and also keep me from getting kicked out. Like I remember Roy H. Park was the owner of the station. And whenever Roy H. Park would come visit the station, they would hide me. They would say things like, "You can't come in tomorrow." And when I would show up, they would like, hide me, like stick me in a closet or whatever, because, they would get in trouble for letting a kid hang out. There were all these, things you're not supposed to do. And I guess having a kid running around the place was one of the no-nos.
Yeah.
But Mac really, was quite tolerant of me and helpful in many, many ways. As a matter of fact, when my parents moved away, and I dropped out of school because the whole work and try to go to school thing was a challenge.
Yes.
At 16, Mac was the one who really motivated me to go, and study and take the GED. So I got my diploma.
Good. That's great.
And
Just to
not
have
not
that foundation.
yeah, not that it really helped me much anywhere, because people pretty much all, once I got through the whole Channel 9 thing, it was always pretty much my reel and resume that would move me along. As a matter of fact,
Absolutely.
you want to see something hysterical?
Yeah. So
I,
for our viewers and that are going to be watching this on the YouTube,
I
just to preface this, we are going to be having some tours of the studio and also some photos and pictures that are going to be put up for the camera. So those of you listening and watching on YouTube will be able to see some of these. So I encourage you, after listening to this podcast, to check out the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see some of Eddie's amazing pictures and the studio and everything. So yeah, he's going to bring that on. That'll be great.
This is really, really a funny book I'm about to show you. And by the way,
Okay.
that's me with Batman right there. You see
Michael
Michael Keaton,
Keaton. My
and
goodness.
that's one of my Barber booms with a film camera on it.
All
But I'm
right.
going
So
to
you
look
worked
down
with,
at
yeah, you worked with Michael Keaton. Now, what production was that, and what camera equipment was that you used on that production?
that was for the movie Gung Ho, and the camera was a Aeroflex 35 millimeter film camera. But what I was going to show you is that I literally still have my resume, 2-page resume or page and a half resume from when I was, can you read it there?
Oh, yes.
18 years old.
That's awesome.
Now, this is before, computers and word processors and even correction ribbon or whiteout. So
Sure.
to create this, okay, and I had to create several to send to places, okay, to create this, you can't make any mistakes. So this whole thing has no mistakes. It's all like, peck, peck on a typewriter.
Yes.
hunt and peck on a typewriter.
It's kind of
So
like
that's
in
kind of
Murder,
funny.
She Wrote. If you make one error, you have to rip the paper out and
E-
start all over again.
Exactly. And then my old friend that I was telling you about, Roy Park, who owned Channel 9 in Greenville. When I was a kid, hanging around the station, they would hide me from him when he came to visit. He lived in Ithaca, New York, and he owned a whole bunch of TV stations, and he would come by like, I don't know, twice a year maybe. Okay. Well, many, many, many years later, I met him at an event and we became friends. And he literally wrote me the first letter he wrote me, like see at the bottom here, all the TV stations and radio
Sure.
stations he owned.
Yes.
He sent me this letter January 23rd, 1981. This was the day after my birthday, January 22nd. But anyway, we became friends. But there's quite a lot of, I don't know how well you can see them, but there's quite a lot of
Yeah. If you,
pictures from a whole bunch of shoots. Like this is when I went to China. Do you remember
that's
how
so
China
great.
used to be closed off to the West
Yes.
until the late, I think until the 70s,
Yes.
when they first opened China to the West. And this is, in front of Tiananmen Square.
Yes.
This
Now,
is in
what
front of
camera
the,
is that you have for our listeners? And then what brought you to China? What were you working on there?
that was a RCA TK-76. It was about $40,000. It weighed like 30 pounds, and you carried it on your shoulder, and you had a separate recorder. And I went there with the governor of North Carolina on a trade delegation.
Okay.
Um, like there's the
Oh, the
badge.
governor.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the governor of North Carolina, my old
wow.
friend Jim Hunt,
All
and
right.
that's me with the camera. This is a pretty hysterical picture. This is my mom and my niece and the governor. And
Wow.
the way this happened was one morning I went, well, let me back up. Yeah. One morning I went to the governor's press conference, and at the end of it, he called me over and he said, I heard your mom's coming to visit. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, has she been to the Capitol? And I said, I'm not sure. And he said, well, bring her by. I'd love to meet her. I'm like, okay. Now, the crazy part about that is she had just told me the night before on the phone that she was coming, but somehow he knew the next morning. So when I called my mom and said, when you're visiting, the governor wants to meet you, she didn't believe me, but she showed up all dolled up, like, like it was a sure thing or something.
Yeah. Well, she was
Um,
proud of you. She was able to have that adventure because of all of the work and believing in your craft and what you wanted to share with the world. And that must have been a pretty amazing feeling to be able to share that moment with your mom.
it, it was. Now I just grabbed something out of the cabinet that's pretty funny, and that is this. This is actually my press credentials
Wow.
from the 70s when I went to China.
Wow. So we're looking at, for our listeners, these amazing, looks like a passport credential when Eddie Barber went to China. And what year again was that? It was in the
This was in 78, I believe.
78. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So
Like,
the world was in Star Wars world at this point. And so this
oh,
you're over there in
oh,
China
I,
doing
I
amazing things.
I have a hysterical Star Wars story.
Oh, do tell.
Okay, are you a Star Wars fan?
I am a huge Star Wars fan.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay. Well, I'm going to start off with the story, and then I'm going to show you the book. Okay. Um, the first time I ever came to LA was, I believe, in 78. And I came out here to try to get work, and I'd had a few years working in the industry. I had a resume, I had, AP and UPI awards for camera work and things I've shot and things like that. And so I came out here. I couldn't get any work in the industry. I couldn't get any real work, cameraman work or anything like that.
Mhm.
Apparently back then, they were the FCC was cutting down or cracking down on the stations because there was no diversity. It was too male whitewashed. Okay. So wherever I went, they basically told me, you could be the best cameraman in the world and we can't hire you because you're the wrong sex and you're the wrong color and blah, blah, blah. So I couldn't get any real work. The only work I got was my uncle, who I came out to visit. He had a friend named Todd that was building a recording studio in his mom's dance studio in North Hollywood. And it was the worst possible work you can possibly imagine. It was stapling fiberglass insulation in the ceiling. So
Wow.
constant itchy fiberglass,
Yes.
getting in my skin, getting my clothes. It was pretty miserable, horrible work. However, one day I'm up in the ceiling, up in the attic area, stapling fiberglass insulation, and I run out of staples. And I go to get more staples and somebody's moved the ladder. And this lady walks by and I'm like, excuse me. And she looks up and she's like, who are you? I said, I'm Eddie. She's like, are you one of Todd's little friends? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she reaches up and I reach down and she says, I'm Todd's mom. They call me DR. And I'm like, okay, nice to meet you. And she hands me the staples and I go back to stapling fiberglass insulation. Well, then after a couple of weeks of that, one day Todd tells me, he says, my sister's in town visiting from New York. We're all going to dinner. You want to go? I'm like, yeah, sure. So we go to dinner. At dinner, everybody acts like his sister is Miss Congeniality or real popular or whatever. Okay. Well, anyway, the next morning when Todd comes to pick me up for work, he comes by my uncle's house. I go get in the car. Before we pull out, he says, I got to tell you, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the way you handled yourself around my sister at dinner last night. I'm like, He says, since Star Wars, all my friends have been kind of weird around her. Well, turns out Todd's sister let me back up. Todd's mom, DR, is Debbie Reynolds. Todd's sister's Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia. So I literally went to dinner with Princess Leia, had no clue. But I swear she didn't look the same without the buns on the side of her head.
Wow, that
But look,
is amazing. And you would have never had that opportunity, if you hadn't had that job. I mean, it was wonderful that they were providing diversity opportunities for the industry for people to be able to get more work in the industry. And then what seemed like, a closed door for you ended up opening the door for that amazing story and also to follow the path that you're on now. That's so great.
So this is my friend Todd's book. I don't know
Todd
if you can
Fisher.
read it or if it's all backwards. And
Yeah,
my
we can
phone is
see it.
backwards.
No, you're
Okay,
perfect. It's
cool.
coming through
So,
clear.
so this is Todd's book,
My Girls, A
My Girls,
Lifetime with Carrie and Debbie. Todd
and
Fisher. My goodness.
and and if you open it up, there's Todd when he was a wee one.
Yes.
And if you read the part he wrote.
Wow. Oh, you muted yourself. Oh, there we go.
You read what it
To my pal and Fred, Eddie, may the force be with you. Wow. I just got goosebumps. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's may the love be with you.
May the love, but see, now my brain just went forced because of Star Wars. Isn't that funny?
Now,
I love that
now,
that happened. That's so great.
Just show you this real quick because
Sure.
this is Todd's mom, Debbie Reynolds.
Yes.
And this is Tom Bosley and Dick Van Patten.
Wow.
And this is two of my camera booms on the shoot.
Now, what was that shoot for that you worked with them on?
That was a workout video that I was doing with Todd and his mom. I did a lot of workout videos back then. The first one I did was with Debbie Reynolds, which seemed to launch the whole. I'm sorry,
Yes.
not Debbie Reynolds, was with Jane Fonda.
You worked with Jane Fonda.
Yes.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, hold a quick moment and I'll.
Yes. So all of the fantastic work that we hear about Jane Fonda with the Fonda workouts and the leg warmers, that is amazing. And you actually got to film all of those. So now we know who was behind all those workout videos that we watched with Jane Fonda. That's fantastic.
So,
I think what a lot of people don't really understand is as big as Hollywood is, it's still small. It's a tight circle. Uh, Everyone seems to kind of get to know everyone in the industry, and
well, it
it's
used to be that way. Now it's
yeah.
gotten quite big and diluted.
Mm.
Um, I apologize. I'm so discombobulated. I'm trying to find, but as I'm going through things, I keep stumbling upon other cool things. So, for
No, that's
example,
fine.
you remember the Beach Boys?
Oh, I am a huge Beach Boys fan. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, this is the Beach Boys. This is me, with the camera on my shoulder. This is Brian Wilson, Mike Love. And you know who this little girl is? She was like 10 years old at the time.
No.
Drew Barrymore.
Oh my goodness, the Barrymore legends from Hollywood. Drew Barrymore from E.T. Oh my goodness, that is fantastic. So now when you worked with the Beach Boys, was that one of their videos? What was that for when you
Yeah,
got to
I,
work with
I
them?
yeah, I directed a music video for them that was called it was for a single called Rock and Roll Rescue.
Wow. Now, was that your first jaunt into doing music videos? Because I believe you've gotten to work with a lot of fantastic musicians,
It
correct?
it was my, I believe it was my third music video as a director, and as a cameraman I'd probably shot like 30 or 40 by then. But
Wow.
here, this is Jane Fonda right here. I
Jane
found it.
Fonda. My
And
goodness,
this
leg
is my
warmers,
barber
everything.
boom.
Now the barber boom. Now, what was that able to do when that captured her workouts? What was
Well,
the innovation there?
okay, prior to the barber boom, there were only cranes that you would ride on. So it was my idea to remote it so you don't have to ride on it. So it was safer, quicker, faster, easier, and it would go from taking 4 or 5 people to where one guy could do it all. It really annoyed the grip union. As a matter of fact, back in the 80s, there used to be this running joke that people would regularly tell me, which was that the grip union had my picture on the wall in their clubhouse and they would throw darts at it.
Because in a sense, your invention kind of took some jobs from them, I would suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as time went on, I often would run into directors, cameramen, writers, producers, editors, all kinds of people that would tell me that they had been a grip for years, and that me creating the barber boom is what motivated them to really do what they wanted to do, which was, go up the ladder and become a cameraman and become a director and become a producer and become an
Yes.
editor and do all these other jobs.
I
Um,
love that Eddie, that you brought that up, because I think that's a life lesson that we can all take with us, whether you're an equestrian, whether you're a stunt performer, whether you're a cameraman, inventor, whatever, is that what seems at the time to be a closed door and the end of the road is merely just a detour. It's the
yeah, it
universe
can be a
stepping in and pointing you, no, this is what you think you want, but this is where you're really going to shine. This is where your purpose is. And it forces you to grow. I think it's just anything in nature, there's always an open niche to fill. And when one niche closes, another niche opens, and it's being adaptable and growing and learning. I love that.
thank you. And so I just picked this thing up. This is like Roseanne from the Roseanne Show when I shot that.
Wow.
And this is Moose from Night Court when I shot that. And I know a lot of these are old shows,
But it's
but
great.
here,
This is the
here,
industry history. This is
here,
where it all
here's
starts.
here's Howie Mandel with hair.
Oh my goodness. Howie Mandel. Wow. Who was one of your favorite celebrities that you really enjoyed working with, that just had a very positive attitude, that was just
Well,
made it a lot of fun to be around? Who was
well,
someone that stands out?
there were lots of them, but you have to keep in mind when I was, coming up in the industry, everybody you see on TV was a celebrity, and I came up, through the ranks at small stations for the most part on the East Coast. So when I came to LA, it was like everybody was a celebrity. And all of a sudden I'm working with all these celebrities and multiple times because there are connections. For example, when I shot the Roseanne Barr show, I met Sarah Gilbert, who now anchors, I think, The View or something like that.
Sure.
Do you remember?
Uh-huh.
And Michael Fishman, who played, I think, TJ on the Roseanne show, and now he like directs the Roseanne show, but now they call it the Connors. But like, for example, that's me and my Barber boom with both of the Sarahs, because both the daughters were named Sarah Gilbert, and I can't remember the other one, but there's both the Sarahs and me.
That's amazing. So you just really get to know, all the
Yeah.
families and everything of Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one, I don't know if you see the symbol or whatever on the jackets, but this was basically a PSA that I was shooting for Greenpeace.
Okay.
And we were shooting it on the roof of my building in Hollywood. So it's like went from me going to their studio and shooting their show to them coming to my studio, and we shoot a PSA together. And then there were other things like later, one time Sarah Gilbert came to my home in Sherman Oaks to shoot a PSA for SOS, Students Over Suicide. And
Oh,
then years later, when I went out to Michael Jackson's ranch, I met Brighton McClure from Family Matters, and Brighton ended up starting Rad Kids, Recording Artists, Actors, and Athletes Against Drunk Driving.
fantastic.
And from that, I ended up shooting and directing a bunch of PSAs. And one of the PSAs had Michael Fishman in it. So I worked with Michael again. And then after that, I did a promo for the Audrey Hepburn Hollywood for Children Family Film Festival. And Michael Fishman was in that with Mara Wilson. And then here's Mara and I, Mara from Matilda, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Sure.
Blah, blah,
Yes.
blah.
Wonderful childhood star. Yes.
Yeah. So it's just this ongoing thing.
That's so great. I think that was that very fulfilling for you. You went from, shooting music videos, basically entertainment type genre, to educational or informative or motivational genres with your PSA, your public service announcements, your educational things. Did you feel that was very fulfilling, that you were making an impact in people's lives, not just entertaining, but also educating?
Well, absolutely. I love teaching. I love speaking at film schools and things like that. Speaking of the kind of thing you're just now talking about, much of my life, I've done a variety of, in addition to the whole, entertainment kind of thing, there's been this whole other area that seems completely unrelated, but somewhat related. And that is, activism, public service, paying it forward, paying it back, blah, blah, blah. So like, for example, you see these citation things.
So right now for our listeners, we're watching the video, we're kind of going through some of the citations of awards of merit, and also some amazing awards that Eddie is going to tell us a little bit about.
Okay, so in addition to the, statues and things, that I've gotten for stuff I've invented.
And just so our listeners know, I am looking at statues of Emmys and the Oscars. So we want to hear all about that as well, Eddie. So I know you'll get to that.
Okay. So, by the way, hold a quick moment. Hey, Caleb, could you try really hard and see if you can find that one that's got the whole, invents the how to make video look like film thing? Because that one would be really awesome to have if somebody can find it. I can't seem to find it. But anyway, so Jackie, back to what I was saying.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that I do that are unrelated to the film industry that I get these citations, like not the kind for
not the bad kind.
Not the kind for speeding or parking in the wrong place, but for doing something they deem good.
Recognition by the city and the council. Yeah.
Yeah, I get a lot of those. As a matter of fact, I think about 3 weeks ago, the city of Los Angeles came here to my building and had an award ceremony and gave me one, the mayor's office.
Wonderful.
But anyway, The reason I have these two here is because this was the first time I got two from one city, the city of Los Angeles, two in 1 month. I don't know if you can see it. Let's move
Yes.
this guy out of the
Perhaps
way,
if
but
you just read it out for us, Eddie, then
okay,
that way our
it,
listeners can
it,
enjoy it as well.
okay. This one, October 2017, and this one's October 2017. Now, the following October 2018, I just got the one, but I've gotten as many as two from the city of Los Angeles in 1 month, and I've gotten as many as a dozen from cities across the country in 1 month. And do you know of all the bunch of little things? You know, it's all, they're for all kinds of things. They're for, you know, helping train the mayor's crisis response team and the LAPD and the LA Fire Department. It's everything from that to going into burning structures and coming out with strangers, which I've done 3 times.
Wow.
Going and overturned cars and coming out with strangers, which I've done 3 times. Now, the crazy thing about that one, the whole going in cars thing, overturned cars,
Yes.
is that's it. Thank you. Caleb, this is Caleb. By the way, this is Caleb, and
All right.
this is Cherie. Cherie is the one that connected us. She's the one that
Yes.
found you.
So Cherie and Caleb, they are your compatriots. Yes.
Yeah, we're coworkers here, cohorts.
I love it.
So anyway, what I was about to say is that the reason that the going in the overturned cars and coming out with strangers is so crazy is because the second time it was live on 7 LA TV stations, like 7 news helicopters hovering above us when I had driven up on this guy, Mark Lagman, who had run off the road on Beverly Glen up near Mulholland and rolled his truck 150 feet down a cliff.
Oh.
And I basically, you know, went down there and pulled him out and kept him alive and talking and everything till authorities got there. But anyway, so the second time it was live on 7 television stations. The third time it was a member of the California Highway Patrol that I pulled out of her car in a snow drift on the 14 freeway near Acton, like 4 days before Christmas, like, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago.
Wow.
But the crazy part is that there was ever a second or third time, because the first time I pulled this lady out of her overturned Fiat on Sepulveda Boulevard in Sherman Oaks. Within moments of getting her out, her car burst into flames.
Oh.
And I still did it 2 more times. How crazy am I?
Well, but it's the wonderful altruistic instinct to just help. Just, you know, you have that, you have that heart that you want to help others, and you want to you'll do anything to self-sacrifice to just make sure that you're helping others. And I think that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I think it's because I have a TBI. Do you know what a TBI is?
No.
It's an acronym for traumatic brain injury.
Oh.
I had an
Oh. Yeah, Eddie, you've muted yourself. Okay, there we go.
If you want to call on him, you'll never guess.
Who?
Do you know who Aaron Hagar is?
No.
Okay. Do you know who Sammy Hagar is?
I've heard of him.
Van Halen.
Oh, okay. Van Halen just called.
Okay. Well, not Van Halen, although I shot a music video for Sammy Hagar, who was the lead singer for Van Halen, but his son, Aaron, who I met when I think he was like maybe 17, 18 years old, as part of shooting Sammy's music video. I haven't seen him in forever.
Wow.
I stumbled upon him today and I reached out to him and he just called me back, but I hung up because I'm on here with you. Oh,
sure. Well, we'll make sure that you get back with him. That's awesome. Tell us a little bit, you were going into about your traumatic brain injury. What caused that?
Oh yeah. So basically in 93, I was sick, like had the flu or something like that. And I went to the doctor. He gave me a prescription for amantadine, Floxin, and some kind of prescription cough medicine. And I went to the pharmacy and they misread it. And instead of giving me the amantadine, they gave me something called amitriptyline. And with amitriptyline, you're supposed to start off on a small dose, like 5 or 10 mgs a day and build up. I was given 200 mgs a day for 7 days, more than enough to kill you, but it didn't kill me. It just messed up my head. So I'm not playing with a full deck. So I believe that it's very possible that part of the reason that I go into burning structures and come out with strangers, and go into overturned cars and come out with strangers, and do crazy things is because I don't think, I just react. And then when it's over, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. What was I thinking?
But Eddie, I think it's a gift. I think that was something, again, that was meant to happen because you're there helping others. Those people are grateful and have their lives because of you. And just to be honest, none of us play with a full deck. None of us do. So,
I
but I
tend
think
to
it's
agree
so,
with you.
yeah, I think it's so great that you've been
Oh,
able to
thank you.
help people.
Thank you. I think I'm one of the people that is aware of that I'm not playing with a full deck. Oh, I meet a lot of people, seems like they're in denial. But anyway, so I want to get back to the
Yes.
activist thing. You
Yes.
want to
So,
hear the biggest one I've ever done in my entire life?
yes. Let's hear the biggest story that when you were working with societies and help
Changing
being
changing the
activists, changing the
changing the
world.
world for the better. Okay. Do you
Yes.
remember that it used to be illegal to work from home?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know how and when the law got changed?
No.
It was in the 90s. And basically what happened was in 89 when I lost everything. And by the way, my life's been a roller coaster, like sometimes I live in mansions, sometimes I live in my car. Like at one time I lived in a little over 18,000 square foot mansion on 2.5 acres on the side of the hill overlooking the valley for 4 years from 96 to 2000. Other times I literally live in my car. So life's a challenge. Fortunately,
Yes.
I never did a bankruptcy yet, and hopefully I won't, but it's up and down. So what happened was in 89, when I lost everything, moved into my car, within about a few days, I figured out how to lease a house on credit cards, and I basically moved into the house. Prior to that, it was 13,200 square foot building, move into what I can fit in a U-Haul in my car, and then move into a house. So for about a year, I worked in a house, worked out of my home illegally. Now, the interesting thing about at the time working out of your home was that you could go to the city of Los Angeles, go to City Hall, you could apply for a business license, you could give them your address, and they would sell you a business license. And usually within 2 months, they would cross-reference, figure out you had given them a residential address for a business,
Sure.
and they would send somebody from building and safety who would show up at your home and shut you down.
Wow.
Okay. And I had very strange arguments with that building and safety gentleman over many years. I got lots of fines, like a stack of them, about $10,000 worth over the years.
Sure.
And I would tell him, this is crazy. I'm going to get the law changed. And he would say, this is the way it is. This is the way it has always been. This is the way it will always be. And there's nothing you can do about it. Well, anyway, got it changed. And the way it happened was LA, I lived in LA. Sherman Oaks was part of LA. LA City Hall is like a fortress. You can't go to City Hall and say, I want to talk to the mayor or I want to speak with one of the council members. You can't get past the police at the front desk. So I started, lobbying them and not emailing, there was no email,
Sure.
snail mailing them, like
Yes.
sending them letters and stuff. And finally, in '95, I managed to flip Councilwoman Laura Chick and get her on board. And by the way, let me back up a moment. Even though I was having, up until '95, I was having zero luck with the city of LA where I worked, I happened to be in the loop to shoot political campaigns for people running for office in small cities around Los Angeles or around Southern California. So I had luck with places like Glendale, Burbank, Beverly Hills, Culver City, City of Orange, Anaheim, different places. And I was able to help get the laws changed around Southern California. But again, LA was a big problem until Laura Chick, who, by the way, went on to become the LA City Controller and then the California Attorney General under Arnold Schwarzenegger. So she was a really smart
Okay.
lady. So once I got her on board, we got CNN on board, and CNN did an interview with, they did a story and they did an interview with me. During the interview, I said, like, I gave the perfect soundbite. Like, as soon as I said it, the producer said, "That's it, we're done. We got our soundbite." My soundbite was this: I think it's totally ridiculous that the president of the United States can work out of his home, but I can't. So they interviewed me, they interviewed Laura Chick, they interviewed some other people. And then what they did was they ambushed Mayor Reardon. They played him my soundbite, they played him Laura Chick's soundbite, and then they turned the cameras on him and interviewed him. And miraculously, he instantaneously got on board. Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Within 2 months, the city of Los Angeles introduced a home occupations ordinance making it legal to work from home. And let me back up a moment. CNN ran their story. Every station in LA picked up and reran the story. And then within 2 months, the city of Los Angeles introduced a home occupations ordinance making it legal to work from home. Mayor Reardon gave me amnesty on all my fines and penalties, like a stack of them, and invited me to speak at a luncheon. And it wasn't just any luncheon, it was a luncheon of the Mayor's Association. So it was mayors, city council members, city controllers, hundreds of them from across the country. When I got done running my mouth, they stood up and applauded. And when I sat down, they started coming up to me in droves, giving me their business cards and asking me to help them get the laws changed in their cities to make it legal to work from home. And within 2 years, we were able to make it legal to work from home pretty much anywhere in the country. Prior to that, it was only legal to work from home in a very few situations, like farms, ranches,
Sure.
churches with live-in quarters, military places, blah, blah, blah. But it was, a very, very small amount. Now, you want to hear what that has saved the United States and probably bleed it over to the rest of the world?
Yes.
It's helped save countless lives.
Yes.
Countless man hours. Americans in the neighborhood of $10 trillion, okay, and help remove about 5 billion tons of carbon emissions from the atmosphere. And
Amazing.
I got that's what Larry King kept saying when he interviewed me. He kept saying, "That's amazing." But anyway,
it just took someone to show the lawmakers a change of perspective. And it's amazing that what started out as a man that you love creating perspective through a camera lens, you were able to change the perspective of the lens that they looked at through life and how people work and how people make a living, and that this is a very important thing to be able to allow people to work from home. And who knew that we'd have a pandemic and COVID, and people ended up working from home to continue to support their family. It's amazing foreshadowing there. So what a story, Eddie.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably the Mona Lisa for me in the activist help others thing. And by the way, I don't want to sound too, like it was selfless, because it was a bit self-serving. I got on that track because I was getting busted from working from home and I wanted to work from home. So I kind of not only, I made it possible for me as well as everyone else.
But you knew what the limitations were. You knew how limiting it was to not be able to do that, and how you could still be extremely productive by having that opportunity open to you to work from home.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now you want to hear my Mona Lisa in the film industry?
Yes. So let's hear the Mona Lisa in the film industry. And then as we come towards the end of the interview, if you could take us through your studio a little bit.
Sure. I'll be quick. And this will bring us back full circle to my friend Todd.
Perfect.
Okay. And by the way, don't let me forget, I got to tell you about my friend Byron. Do you know who Byron Pitts is?
No. So you'll have to educate us.
It's huge. Okay. So my Mona Lisa, something I worked on for 15 years from 1970 to 1985, was trying to figure out how to make video look like film. Okay. And after 15 years of, trying to figure it out, not being able to, putting it on the back burner, then later thinking about it, bringing it back up, I finally figured it out in 1985. and this magazine, Optic Music Magazine. This is their 1986
Okay.
issue.
1986 issue, Optic Music Magazine. Okay.
Yeah. See here, it says, can you read that?
Video Telecom's Eddie Barber invents a film-like video system. This is incredible because I think many of us do love the aesthetic look of film, especially getting into this digital age. There's just nothing like film. So
Yeah.
how did that exactly work?
It used to be that you had to shoot film in order to get the look of film.
Right.
Okay. And I never understood that starting in, and by the way, before I get away from this, do you know who this is?
So we're
You
looking
see
at
this,
someone in a picture. No,
see
who
this
is
guy
that?
right here?
Who is that?
That's my friend Todd Fisher, Carrie's
Todd
brother,
Fisher,
Debbie's son. And this
Carrie
guy,
Fisher's brother, Debbie
yeah,
Reynolds' son. My
yeah.
goodness.
And then this is me down here. They worked with me on the Beach Boys video I
On the
directed.
Beach
And,
Boys video.
and,
Wow.
and this guy here with the other camera, this is Dusty Ebsen. This is Buddy Ebsen, you know, Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
That's his son, Dusty.
Buddy
That's Todd and
Ebsen's
Dusty.
son. My goodness. This is just great I'm absolutely a fan of Hollywood history. So this is fantastic.
And by the way, this is an article and this is an ad. In this ad, this is an ad for Aeroflex. And what they have is a camera crew on a crane that you ride on shooting film with a film camera, an Arri film camera. I put both of those out of business. People don't shoot film anymore. People don't ride on cranes anymore.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
But anyway, the way this came about was when I was a teenager touring Channel 9, you know, when I went on the field trip with my art teacher, Miss
Sure.
Eeks, and we went to the local station and they gave us a tour. One of the things I didn't understand was when they showed me the projection room and the film chain, how like I saw the film chain and the projection room, and I asked them, I said, how, you know, it was like a video camera shooting a piece of film being projected versus a view through a front surface mirror. And I asked him, I said, why does this look so good and the studio camera looks so bad? Is the camera in this film chain, is it different from the one in the studio? And they said, no, it's the same camera, just different configuration. So it got me thinking, how could a video camera shooting a piece of film via a front surface mirror look like a movie, and pointing that camera at a person look like a bad soap opera? So I did a lot of research over 15 years trying to figure it out. When I was younger, I was getting nowhere really fast. When I moved to LA and started working with big time DPs, I got their ear. So it was easy for me to ask them about, you know, why does film look so much better than video? And they would say it's lenses. I did test, it wasn't lenses. They said it's lighting. I would do test, it wasn't lighting. So they said it's quality, contrast ratio, all these things. It was none of those things. It was TMI. It was too much information. The way I figured it out was in 1985, I was having a new video machine tied into my edit system. You know, you had to tie it in back then. And
Sure.
I asked the engineer, I said, why is it when I'm scanning through video and I count the roll bars, why is it the math doesn't work out? Because the video is supposed to be 30 frames a second. He said, what do you mean? And I showed him and I rolled through and he laughed and he said, well, you're not counting frames, you're counting fields. Each frame has an A field and a B field. So it wasn't 30 pictures a second. It was 60 pictures a second because of the 60 hertz, you know, power supply. So I figured out, oh, it's too much information. It looks too real where movies look dreamy. So it was all a matter of figuring out how to take 60 pictures and turn it into 24 and it looked like film. And it was simple math. You basically would take the video and play it at 2.5 times normal speed. So it's, and you record that, which then took the 150, you know, because 2.5 times 60 is 150. So you would take the 150 and transfer it to, playing really fast to another machine, and that brings it back to 60, but it's too fast. So to get the 60 back to normal speed, you go 0.4 or 40%, and 40% of 60 is 24. And that's how 24p, which is how everybody shoots now, came about in the mid 80s.
That is just mind-boggling. Just to
And
take the
24p
uh-huh.
now generates literally tens of billions of dollars a year. By the way, I want to share one last thing with you before we go on the tour.
Sure.
And that is all these things, like inventing things that save, that make people billions of dollars a year, and things that save Americans trillions of dollars and lives and all that. Of all that, guess how much money I get?
How much? Zilch. Oh, you've muted yourself again. There we go.
$0.00.
$0.00.
None of my awards, like, whether it's an Emmy, Oscar, Pickup Show, an NAB, things from the city, blah, blah, blah. None of them are like Nobel Peace Prizes. They don't come with any money. And the things that I've won that do come with money, I have a tendency to give too much away. Like I did when I did the Michael Jackson video and I won $10,000. I told everyone that if we won, I would pay them. By the time I got through paying everybody, it was over $13,000. So I made minus $3,000 out of the 10 grand.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that, because it's hard. I mean, we do need money to support ourselves and everything like that. But Eddie, know that what you have given is truly priceless, and the lives that you've saved, the people that you've helped, that is the true reward. And that I'm glad that we're going to get this story out so that people can hear this and learn all the contributions that you have made. But just know, like, for me personally, I am grateful for the innovations that you've made in the entertainment industry and the humanitarian front. And it is appreciated. It's appreciated more than what money would be. I mean, it's like, and I could tell, like, your enthusiasm, your passion for it, your love for it shines through, and your beautiful soul. And that's what matters, because you're not blinded, and you're not by, the money, or I'm only doing this to get the funding and get the money. That, because in the end, we can't take it with us, and it's not what it's about. And you've created innovations that have helped to make life better. And just know, Eddie, that it is recognized, it is appreciated beyond what money could offer. So thank you for what you've contributed.
My pleasure. You want to see something cool?
Yeah. So take us on a little tour as we wind down here.
Okay. This is our studio. This is one of my Barber booms. Just sold it to a school in Lancaster.
Okay.
We'll be delivering it to them fairly soon. This is one of our trusses. The 360s that are popular in the event industry?
Yes.
These are our new 360 top spinners.
Wow.
And then those down there are our platform 360s. By the way, the 360s are a good example of one of my ongoing problems. I invented them, okay, but people with money blew them up. It's now become $100 million a year industry. And literally after I showed it at a couple of trade shows, people with money, like deep pockets, mostly folks out of China, copycat knockoff competitors start copying them and selling them like hotcakes. And now you can like type in 360 photo booth or whatever, and there's like 50 of these copycat knockoff competitors. They're making millions, and I'm doing the old struggle juggle thing.
Yeah, it's a shame that people don't respect other people's properties and inventions, and that you really have to protect your creations.
Show you my favorite, okay?
Yeah, show us your favorite and tell us why it's your favorite.
Okay, this is my favorite. Do you know who Byron Pitts is? He anchors ABC Nightline.
Okay. And the title is Step Out on Nothing: How Faith and Family Helped Me Conquer Life's Challenges. I love that. That's so central and key to the mission of this podcast. So, why is that your favorite book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. By the way, if you Google Byron Pitts and then add Obama, you'll see him interviewing the former leader of the free world.
Oh, that's
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Before I met Byron, Byron was literally a teenager with a stutter and a dream to become a network news anchor.
Wow.
Okay. He was my first ever intern kind of person that I worked with at Channel 11 in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. So he literally would follow me around and help me carry my stuff, be like my assistant. Okay.
Uh-huh.
If you go to the middle of his book, which happens to be like literally it's the middle of the book,
Yes.
page
The intermission.
147. Yeah. On page 147,
Okay.
he talks about me.
Aw.
See my name? He
Yes.
talks about me for pages. How
That's so
cool is that?
great. That's so
And,
great. You made
and,
an impact on his life. That's what
and
this
you
is all about, is touching people's lives.
and this is what he said on the inside cover. Can you read it?
Let's see. To my brother Eddie, you helped save my life. Your kindness and spirit still inspire love and friendship. 60 minutes. How beautiful is that?
That's when he was the anchor of 60 Minutes News. Now he's the anchor
Wow.
of ABC Nightline.
I love it. Well, Eddie, you surely have inspired so many people, and we're excited with Tir-Kai Tales to be able to continue to share your story and how you've assisted the advancement of the film industry, entertainment industry, but most importantly, your humanitarian efforts through your craft. I think you are a beautiful example, Eddie, of how you can use your passion and your craft to help make a difference in the world. And I would just love to sum up, moving forward, two things. What other impact would you like to leave? And also, how can people find out more about your company and your equipment? Is there a website that they can go to that I'll put a link on at the podcast bio? So tell us a little bit about your impact moving forward, and then how we can get in touch with you.
Okay, well, let's get in touch with first. One of the websites is www.spincam.pro.
Eddie, I think it's so important that you continue with this passion for conservation efforts, for humanitarian efforts, using your passion, using your gift for technology, for camera work, for everything that has enlightened you throughout your life. And I wish, on behalf of all of our listeners and myself and our entire studio here, that we hope to see you continue with these efforts to get this information out, to help make positive changes for all of these issues that you are deeply passionate about. So we thank you so very much, and excited to support you, and excited to look forward to seeing what impact that you can continue to make in the world in the years moving forward. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Jackie.
Thank you, Eddie. You are an absolute delight, and I wish you all the best. And thank you for joining us here on Tir-Kai Tales.
My pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
God bless.
Bye-bye.